This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 79. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life Shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, my friends, my Telemark family. It's another week in Freeheel Life existence, and we're here, and we're going to be doing another podcast. But first, I want to jump into some newsroom and notes, and I've got some new content to make you aware of across the board and what we're doing. What I was saying, most of our content right now is coming out on telemarkskier.com. You can check that out. We'd love for you to be a subscriber over there, but there are plenty of free goodies that you can get. We just put a piece up announcing Ty Dayberry's new movie, Future Freeheel 2, which is dropping in the fall. And if you're not familiar with Ty, he's definitely one of kind of the OG free ride tele skiers from way back in the day, and he's still pushing the limits of stuff. We put up a little news piece with kind of a mini teaser from his upcoming movie he's going to be putting out, and we'll be kind of following that story as it progresses and we get closer to the fall. But if you need some snow stoke, go check that out. It's gonna be awesome, and you can actually go watch the original Future Freeheel on our YouTube channel, and you can find that. I think it was back in 2017. We also just put up a new pinup, which are our profiles of community people, Telemark community folks out there doing some cool stuff. Of Marshall Thompson, who started San Juan Sticks. This is all for all you lurkers out there. Lurk being kind of a staff, if you're not familiar with that. There's kind of I want to say growing group, but there's always been a group of lurkers out there. And Marshall did a cool thing and kind of started innovating on that idea. So we've got a cool little profile about him and his little company, San Juan Sticks. So like I said, this is all run by you, telemarkskier.com. So definitely become a subscriber. It's $3.99 a month or $39.97 a year. And we're pushing out premium content every week, in-depth gear reviews, knowledge on the industry, like I said, pin-up profiles, and just basic news about what's going on. So we want to kind of keep you in the mix, and that should be our hope, is that will really become kind of our center point for our Telemark community worldwide, and a place where you can find good, solid information about gear, events, and what's going on out there. So, well, today I am joined again by my good old friend, Mr. Craig Dostie. How are you doing, Craig?
Good. Emphasis on the old.
You're such a young man. Come on.
For my age, I am.
You're a young man for your age. That's funny. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, what's been going on, man? I haven't had you on for a little while. I know you're out skiing still, which blows my mind. I mean, it shouldn't blow my mind, but you are out skiing.
You know, and here's what it blew my mind. Not that I was out skiing this late in the year, because for me, it has been tradition to ski at least through May, and if conditions warrant, I'll ski through June. And I'm not one of the turns all year guys, because when this becomes your vocation, you need a break every once in a while. So, I determined that summer is my break time, and I got plenty of other adrenaline filled sports to do. And so I do those in the summer, right? I still get my adrenaline fix. But anyway, I was out, was it yesterday? No, it was the day before yesterday. And what blew me away was it was corn snow, which is not that common in Coldowito. So I took advantage of it, and I as I was skinning up, I was like, wow, there's it looks like the phenomenon that I call Lily's lace was forming, but I didn't actually expect to experience it. I just saw that I saw the telltale signs of it being formed, but I didn't see any big patches of it. So you might ask, what is Lily's lace? And I call it Lily's lace because the people that I first started backcountry skiing with called it Lily's lace in honor of Barbara Lilly, who I don't think she's still skiing, but I believe she's like 95, and she's still climbing mountains, not like rock climbing, but she's still climbing 13,000 foot peaks in the Sierra. And so, I mean, she's still moving. It's pretty amazing. And anyway, so there's this phenomenon that occurs regularly in the Sierra and rarely here in the Rockies. And that is, first of all, you've got to have a good corn snowpack. So the snow has to be dense and pretty solid. And then, you got to have the warmth of the summer and a fair amount of sun. And what happens is, in the right conditions, the sun will beat down on the slope and it'll melt the top layer. And the top layer will melt in such a way that it becomes its own kind of sheet, a lens, a pane of glass, so to speak, that's, maybe 2 millimeters thick, like a 1/16 of an inch or less. And once that forms, it's a lens, and then the snow underneath it melts even more, but this sheet on top stays there. And usually it stays because there's enough of a light wind or even a heavy wind, okay, that it stays frozen, but it melts underneath. And so what you get is this basically a sheet of ice, of glass made of water, right? And you can get some pretty big sheets and pretty big zones. Anyway, so I was climbing up and I was seeing the evidence of this growing, but it was just little patches here and there. But I was like, cool, this is great. This is pretty rare. And I'm skinning up and I'm noticing, and the conditions were suggesting that by the time I came down, I was going to be perfect corn snow, which it was. But as I'm coming down, then I hit this patch of Lily's lace. And here's why it's so cool. And we call it Lily's lace because when you see it, I mean, you see this big sheet of like glass, but then, there's breaks in it. And so it looks like lace. So that's why it's Lily's lace. And anyway, when you hit it, it is like a pane of glass, okay? And it breaks. And when it breaks, it makes a noise like breaking glass, like chimes. So it's a unique experience. And I had 3 solid turns in a row through Lily's lace and, with the chimes going off. It was... for me, very rewarding and exciting. And it was like, yes, totally made the climb worth it.
Oh, I love that, man. No, it's cool when you get out and have those experiences outside where it's like, kind of like unique situations where, like something like that where you're not going to see that very often, or you're not used to even seeing it in Colorado, which is even better. I know when
yeah.
Well, I know when I saw you had a picture of your turns. We were gonna get on a phone call, and you're like, you're like holding or something like that, and then you sent me a picture of that, and I was like, "Are you skiing right now?" I was like, glad someone's getting after it because it's it's definitely pretty warm here, so that's awesome. Is that how I know you're up on Cameron Pass. Is it holding snow pretty good up that high? I mean, what is that, 12,000 feet?
Well, here's the thing. So we, we had a pretty dangerous snowpack. And I mean, I even did a Dostie's view on, hey guys, just like chill out, okay? Because we lost 18 people in the span of 2 weeks. Not all in Colorado. I mean, Colorado. I mean, all over. There was even a Navy death in California, which is unusual, not unheard of, but statistically more rare than Colorado. It's kind of like expected, which is unfortunate, but that's the way it goes, right? Yeah. But in early March, we had a big wet storm come through the Rockies here, and it totally transformed the snowpack. So it went from everything being really high avalanche danger to everything's open. Where do you want to go? Go wherever you want. I mean, you got to be careful in encouraging that. You still got to use your head and think about things. But certainly, I know for sure up around the Cameron Pass area, it came in heavy and wet. And the weather reports were saying 3 feet of snow fell, which may be accurate. But when I went up to Cameron Pass, what I saw was 6-foot berms that were 1-foot berms before that storm. So I would say 5 to 6 feet of snow fell there, and it was dense, and it was heavy, and it compacted everything. And so right now, certainly in that area of the state, we've got a really good Sierra-like snowpack. And the key is you got to make sure that it freezes the night before, and you're going to have sun, and it's going to warm up, and you just got to figure out roughly how long it's going to take for that top surface to melt, and you want to make sure you top out at that time.
Yeah, spring skiing, you got to time it perfectly. So that's the ticket for that. Yeah. Well, that's good, and we actually got a good corn. Remember, before when you came out to Salt Lake, that was a pretty good little yes. sun spot. We got some good little creamy top stuff. So
yeah, and I was noticing on the skin up on that you guys probably had a similar phenomenon, similar time frame, early March, where you had a heavy snowfall, and it just compressed everything and made it quote safe.
Yeah. Quote unquote safe. No, that's good. Well, I'm glad you're still out skiing. It's like I said, I'm glad someone's out there getting after it from the crew. So it's awesome.
Well, I got to do my job here. I got to be testing stuff.
I know. I was, and I'm gonna get you to send us some more photos so we can share in the stoke and get that up on the Instagram account or something. So
cool. Yeah.
Well, hey, so one thing I wanted to pick your brain on is we put up that news piece on telemarkskier.com about the kids' boots getting cut from Scott. And you brought up something in there. I mean, we don't have to go too deep in this, but I thought, one, your thoughts on losing kids' boots again, which I know there's been time. I think I mentioned this last week in the podcast, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but it's almost like kids' boots have come and gone, and we always just assume that they're not there because no one knows. But you brought up a really interesting point about the guy that was involved with the Teledactyl and the
Telesaurus,
the G-Rex.
Yeah.
So who was that guy at Garmont? And then just brief thoughts. I just wanted to get your feedback on the kids' boots thing and what your thoughts were.
So, and I neglected to explain who John Schweitzer was. So maybe I should go back and edit in a little bit. But here's the thing. Schweitzer took over Garmont USA. I'm going to say 95. Maybe it was 94. And Garmont was already working on developing a plastic Telemark boot as a competitor to Scarpa's Terminator. And it wasn't like they weren't aware of the demand for that, but they didn't make it to market first. And so they were kind of scrambling. Okay, they realized, oh, we gotta develop this, right? So Schweitzer came in. They were developing the plastic boot. It was not going in the direction they wanted, and so Schweitzer brought in Paul Parker, who was involved in the early stages of developing the Terminator. So Paul brought some experience with him, and they shortly came, I think it was 96, they came out with, I'm forgetting what the bigger boot was. It was Veloce, basically they came out with a T2 and a T1, but which was the Veloce, and I'm going blank on what the other boot was. It eventually morphed into the Energy.
Right.
But I don't think it was called the Energy initially. Anyway. Was
it the Gara?
So,
you think a Gara?
maybe. Yeah. I don't remember. So, anyway, Schweitzer's in charge now, right? And they got their plastic boot program moving, and they were doing well, and they offered a good alternative to what Scarpa had. They offered boots that were wider, but higher volume feet, which was really good. And Schweitzer realized, okay, this is great. And Telemark was kind of in its heyday in the late 90s and early 2000s. But he realized if we're going to keep this going, we have to have a way to pass this on to the next generation before they become adult sized, because that's really how you maintain momentum in any sport. You got to get kids involved. And the problem was there was no molds smaller than size 20, Mondo 21, I think, or 22. So basically, he wanted to develop the molds that got down smaller. I think they got down to 19, maybe 18.
19.
19?
Yep.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it would be great if they get down to 17. But the reality is there might have to be such dramatic changes to the plastic, because you could scale things down to 17, but someone who's in a size 17 Mondo boot, the thickness of the plastic might be too much that, it's the right size, but I can't bend the dang thing. I don't weigh enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, he felt it was super important that kids' boots get developed. So he convinced the owner at Garmont in Italy that, we need to develop molds for small boots. So they were working on the Excursion, and they basically took the Excursion, and I think within a year or two after launching the Excursion, they launched the kids' Telemark boots, which was just the Excursion mold sized down to 19.
Yeah. Thanks for that backstory. So if you haven't checked out that little news piece, it's a good one to kind of wrap your brain around the whole kids thing, the future of the sport, all that good stuff. So I'll have to learn more about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Schweitzer.
I remember. Yeah, when I was talking to him, I mean, part of me was like, but how many you're going to sell? He goes, doesn't matter. We got to do it.
Well, and there is a good argument, chicken or the egg kind of thing on that for sure. And I think that's sort of the problem is people, it typically goes by the wayside because people are thinking, kids, they're not going to want to learn how to do it, or they can't. That's a whole nother podcast. I mean, we've talked about that, but obviously we've had young kids get on rental gear here and be just fine. So, okay. Well, thanks for shedding some light on that. Cause I wanted people to kind of know a little bit more on John Schweitzer. Is that what his first name was?
Yeah.
But I was curious too, you and I have been kind of talking behind the scenes about kind of some other gear gossip, and I'm not totally sure what I probably should have asked you what's clear to go, what's not before we hopped on here. But I know there's a couple things that I thought, you've got your hands in kind of talking to everybody and knowing what's going on. I know there's a couple things that are coming to mind that we can't talk about, but there's some stuff that I know we were going to work on some pieces or at least some little news tidbits, but I thought this might be a good opportunity to throw some, for all the gear junkies out there, some stuff that's happening. And Volet was the first one that came to mind. I know there's some stuff that's green light and some that is not, but maybe so they came out with their TTS binding, which was this year. But didn't you tell me there was something with the springs or something that's good to go that we can that they have talked about?
Yeah, actually, I've got this. I started writing the story up the other night, and then I realized, oh, you know what? I need some clarification because so right now, Volet's TTS system is using the tech toe they developed for split boards, which is a very minimalist, manually engaged set of 2 pins, and it works, right? I remember the first time I went out, I was like, "Is this gonna hold?" I knew it would hold for skinning, of course, and I was, of course, reasonably confident it would hold for making turns, or because they wouldn't put that out without actually testing it themselves. And so I'm sure they kind of did that and went, wow, it holds. Okay, that's cool. Let's make a product, which they did. So when they first introduced it, they offered a standard spring and a sticky spring, which is the spring that comes with the switchback. It's an option for Switchback X2. But they also realized, partly through my research with TTS, because I did a 5-part series on making your own Telemark tech binding, because a lot of people were. Lengel's concept of TTS is absolutely fantastic. The execution of his OMG Olympus Mountain Gear Tech Toe, while it is a workable, usable tech toe compared to the competition, it's not that well liked. People are more comfortable and familiar with Dynafit or G3 Zion or Plume, or Solomon's got, tech toes now. Anyway, there's a bunch of other options, and people are more comfortable with these brands that have a longer track record. And so people wanted to make their own TTS binding that use Mark's cable block and cables, which are basically his own proprietary cable rod, and Volet cartridge springs from, the Hardwire, the Switchback, any number of Volet bindings. So, but there was a limit, and basically, in simple terms, if you had size 10 or larger feet, the chance of you limiting out, compressing the spring completely, especially on a deep knee telly, was pretty high. And when you do that, then the forces go nonlinear, and you start ripping stuff out of your skis and wrecking your skis. So there was a need for a longer spring, and Volet had developed a longer spring cartridge, but to make it actually a longer throw, they had to make the wire thinner. Well, being thinner, it's softer. And so it was like, yeah, you can get deep knee, but then you're going to lose the spring tension that you may like. And so it's this game of where do you put the pivot, and how much spring tension can you get? And if you got a larger foot and you want a fairly active response, but not too active, well, it just wasn't all that satisfactory for a lot of people. So Volet decided, all right, we got enough interest in this. We're making our own product now. Let's redo the springs. So they're coming out with a long travel spring that has the spring rate of the standard spring. So it's not so soft. And that's going to be available on their website, I believe, starting next month in June.
Well, that's cool. It's interesting to see how far that's come, the whole TTS thing. And I kind of think in general, most of our gear gossip and news over the next year or two is mostly going to reside in the binding department, from what I can tell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the reality is, I keep saying this, in my videos, but the reality is all the development that's occurred to try and basically make NTN, the new Telemark norm, more acceptable to more people, has been in the realm of bindings. And what has kind of forced that is TTS, and then from TTS, the development of the Mejo and of the links, and then everyone doing their own do-it-yourself TTS bindings, and so it's allowed a lot more different options. And as you pointed out, the key to liking NTN, because it's a different connection. So it feels different, and the feeling is different enough that it forces people to modify their telemark technique. And I'm very sensitive to not wanting to change my technique. I remember I was very resistant to plastic boots, even though I saw their value initially. I did not like the original Terminator. It was too stiff compared to what I was used to with leather.
It was too much radness for you at the time, dude. Come on.
Well, it required me to change my technique, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that was a pretty big jump for sure.
It was a huge jump, okay, but a lot of people didn't have as much time, perhaps, on leather as I did, or I don't know. All I know is it took off. It was almost everyone embraced it except me. They were kind of like, dude, come on, wake up. This is awesome. And I remember my first pair of plastic boots were the T2, and they were too stiff at the time. And so I ended up, when Garmot came out with their plastic boots, the Veloce was softer than a T2. So I went with a Veloce. And that's how I made the transition. Okay. And I think with NTN, it's a similar sort of thing, in that, and this is what's difficult, okay, because there are not that many places where you can just go in and rent and try the different options, okay? Not every shop can afford to carry every possible combination, and certainly to have it in a rental fleet. So, people have to kind of commit and buy it, and that's kind of scary, right? And then you have to adjust your technique. And in my experience, the technique adjustments are always worth it. They're difficult. They're frustrating. It's like, why do I have to relearn how to do the telemark? I'm already good. But right? I mean, that was my perspective when I went from leather to plastic. I was like, why do I have to redo this? But once I made the jump, I went, oh, here's why I got to do this. Because with a plastic boot, now I have more lateral power, and I can hold an edge better on firm snow. So yeah, this is worth it.
Yeah.
And NTN is really, it's the same sort of thing. The reality is, it's a tighter connection between the boot and the binding when you connect at the second heel. And the result is you get even more lateral control and even more power to your edges, which is better on firm snow. The The corollary to that is it changes you. It forces you to change your stance, your technique for soft snow, which is where Telemark, in my opinion, and I know you share this opinion, and most people listening to this share this opinion, Tele is absolutely superior in soft snow. So that there's the reluctance. It's like, well, what? I don't want to change my technique for soft snow. It's awesome right now. Well, with NTN, sorry, you got to change it.
Yeah.
But if you do, if you're successful in that, you change your technique a little, but you still get the soft snow performance. And what you get is even better hard snow performance. And the change you need to make in your technique for NTN translates back to 75 millimeter. It doesn't nullify your ability to ski 75 millimeter gear. It actually makes it better. And NTN just kind of insists on it. Whereas 75 millimeter, it's optional.
Yeah, and I think, with the binding, like I said, I think in a way, as we're talking, I mean, it is very obvious. Like almost the binding, and people don't realize this, but the bindings are almost catching up with the fact that there were NTN boots. Like you're saying, like the Olympus Mountain Gear TTS really kind of started down this road of going, hey, because at that time, all you had was Rotofella Freeride and Freedom, and so it kind of opened up these doors. And that made me think about kind of bringing up any sort of news with M equipment over in France. I'm kind of curious, like, have you talked to Pierre lately? Yeah.
Let's hold that for a moment. Let's circle back to that.
Okay.
Because I started down this this road on what's different with NTN, and I got caught up in technique. But I wanted to make this point, and that is that it's real interesting with Telemark how we get so obsessed with gear. In fact, I would say even more than with Alpine, because with Alpine, once you lock the heel, you can't tell what the bind, you're locked to the ski. And so then it's just a matter of your boot and the ski. The binding is just an interface. But with Telemark, the turn is influenced by the gear, and the gear makes the turn possible. All right. And so the important thing really is the turn. The turn is what it's all about. That sweeping, awesome, adjustable, responsive Telemark turn is what we love. But it's the gear that makes it possible. But the gear influences the technique to execute the turn. And so we get caught up in this gear talk, but it's just a means to an end. And a lot of people think that we're obsessed with gear. No. It's just that the gear makes it possible. And because it's such a unique and variable equation that, there's the boot component, the ski component, and the binding component. They all contribute to the sensation of the turn. And so we can't ignore the gear, but it's not about the gear.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. Is maybe that's why the gear obsession seems to be, or what is perceived as the gear obsession. A lot of it does have to do with the binding, because 100%, like we're talking about customization, how things feel are very much determined by that combination of ski boot and binding to your technique. Whereas, yeah, I agree. Alpine, you're basically, the boot could be stiffer or softer depending on what type of Alpine flex you want, and the ski's obviously going to do it, but the way you fasten to it, really doesn't determine how your Alpine turn is going to look. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think and here's the thing. NTN just adds more options, because the same thing existed with 75 millimeter. I mean, initially it was just 3 pins, and then there was a cable binding, and then there's this new cable binding, the super loop. Oh well, there's this other new binding, the Targa, and now we got the Hammerhead, which is underfoot cable routing, and the Pitbull, and the forces are different, and the binding is very critical because it's that connection, and it also has been historically a weak point. The original Pitbull was the first underfoot cable routed Telemark binding, at least in the modern era, but they didn't make the cable strong enough, so it would blow up. I mean, the cable would break. Okay, and then the Hammerhead came along, and the cable was strong enough, and then things just kept developing, and every one of these bindings feels different. A switchback feels different than a switchback X2, which feels different than a Black Diamond 01, which feels different than a Targa, which feels different than an Axle, which feels different than a Hammerhead. Not as much, but anyway, every one of these things has a different feel, and we always, I think it's just endemic to Telemark. Whatever equipment you're on, you're going to have to adjust your technique. That's just the way it is.
Well, wrapping that back into the gear. I mean, I'm curious we're focusing. We've kind of flown into this binding topic, but I'm kind of curious, like what. Obviously, there's not a whole lot going on with boots, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because we could just talk about the same thing over and over again, and everyone would probably listen to it anyways. But what do you think's missing? I also feel like coming out of this COVID year, and obviously people are still dealing with that. I know, people down in Australia and stuff, like they might even be dealing with that going into another ski season. But I'm curious, like, doesn't seem like there's been a ton of action going on, but where do you see the binding thing going? If the boots aren't moving, we kind of have this stationary thing. What's missing in the binding world? Because that could be innovated on. Because I think I have a couple ideas, but I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are.
Wow, what's missing in the binding world? I guess I'm more curious what you think is coming, because so here's the way I look at it. Okay, I see what's out there, and I see incremental refinements to Meijo and Lynx that I think they're great bindings right now. There's just some minor things that come up, and they have to do generally with snowpack preventing the binding from working flawlessly, like Meijo with the standard kickstand version. Unless you do some extra work with anti-ice tape or silicone spray, the chance of snow packing underneath the flex plate while you're telemarking is, and it's also snow dependent, but it's fairly high probability that you're going to get some boot jack. And even if you take steps to minimize that, you're not going to eliminate it. You can minimize it. Now there's a new spring box that's available, which I'm calling the free ride spring box, just in deference to, it's really intended for predominantly inbound skiers, because when you use that free ride spring box, you eliminate the option of having a flat foot for touring. You have to be on a climbing post when you're touring. That's how you engage it for that. So anyway, so that's one of the problems, like with Meijo. Okay, Lynx doesn't ordinarily pack with snow underneath, but I have experienced it. I mean, it was very sticky snow conditions, and on that particular day, it was actually even worse than Meijo. It was wild. But the more common issue with Lynx is the claw it does not reliably grab the duck butt after skinning. And I'm not totally certain because, it's really hard to bend over backwards and lean down underneath and see what's going on the bottom of your boot. But I think what's going on there is there's snow getting trapped in the duck butt above it where the claw rests. And that's preventing the claw from seating in there. Or this is another thing that might be going on. Again, I can't totally tell. There might be snow that's building up underneath the sole of the boot when I'm touring. So between that leaf and the bottom of my boot sole. And so when I go to flip to downhill, there's enough snow. It's not a lot, okay? But it's enough that the duck butt is raised up. And so when the claw flips forward, it doesn't go into the slot. It hits the butt, okay? And so it doesn't go on easily. And so I find that I have to pull it up and on. And I've gotten pretty adept at it. So I don't consider it a deal breaker. But, like if you're coming from something like an axle or a switchback, which is just so simple and reliable, it's like, wait a minute, I paid how much and this thing doesn't work reliably? But ski is awesome. So you got to balance some of this stuff, right? So I see some of this stuff getting eventually resolved incrementally while we wait for some changes in boots.
Yeah, you know what I'm curious about. So here's this is maybe a little more general, and you're always the guru of the backcountry. Because whenever I ask you about bindings, it's always tech toe. Not always, but primarily that's where because that's what you're skiing on most. But
yeah,
I think what I'm interested to see with the binding field of players at this point is, one, I'm curious if Volet will ever get into the NTN game, not TTS game, but like actual second heel NTN. That I'm curious about. I also am curious to see if Bishop will get into the second heel game, because I think it's just slicker. It's smaller on the ski, and I personally think that's the future of that. And I'm also curious to see if somebody else pops up. That's what I'm interested to see, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff for and you see it, like there's a lot of innovation out there with just people making stuff in their garage. There's ideas, but yeah, I'm kind of, there's obviously people that are already invested, companies, smaller businesses that are invested, like Volet and Bishop, but I'm kind of curious to see where they go. But I'm also kind of curious. I think there's a lot of stuff with the bindings that could happen while we're waiting for the boot thing, because obviously I don't sleep at night because all I do is think about the weight of my boots. I know that's what I do between talking to you and doing podcasts, man. I just sit here and look at my boots and cry, and I get sad, and then I try to go away, but then I just get I get more sad, and then I don't know. It just goes on and on. I haven't slept for like 10 years now.
So when I talked to Valet about this longer spring, they were not explicit, but they definitely implied that they've obviously sold enough of their version of a TTS binding to go, oh, okay, I think we need to offer some more options here.
They came out of a cave and were like, oh, check out this NTN thing that's going on.
Yeah. Well, and here's the interesting thing. I mean, Wally was at the forefront of telemark innovation in the 80s. Okay. But he has, over time, he has shifted from being at the forefront to being the last guy to the plate. But when he comes, he comes out with a really solid, simple, and I know that's their mantra, but it's their mantra because it's Wally's vision of how to do things. Okay. Keep it simple, keep it solid. All right. And so he was the last to come out with a free pivot with a switchback, but dang, that thing is so simple and reliable. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's great. And so I see them doing the same thing with TTS. The fact that they've dipped their toe in the water means they see value and they're going to move slowly. But when they come out with something, it's going to be like, yeah, now that's a good answer. So I see them, I don't know, either they're going to, like right now, they're carrying tech toes on their website. All right. Well, that tells me they're developing a relationship with these alpine touring binding companies. And eventually they're going to probably OEM one of those tech toes and say, we don't, we're going to order whatever, 100 bindings from you and 50 toes or 100, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. Okay. But they're going to be like, no, we want full bindings and we want half binding. We just want the tech toe because we're going to mate that. We're going to take our basic TTS plate and we're going to make a different one that works with this tech toe. I see that coming. Which tech toe it is, I don't know. That's going to be one of those things that comes down to a relationship between two companies and them striking a good deal where both sides make money.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Do you think they'll ever get into the second heel game? Like actual NTN? Or are they going to start a revolution of TTS Telemark skiers that then are going to be screaming on the internet to have grooves in their heels for the heel throw?
Oh man, yeah. I don't think a groove on the heel is coming, but maybe. I mean, it could, right?
I'm just teasing.
I think they're gonna. I think in the short, for sure in the short term, they're going to remain real heel advocates. Okay, but I know that they see value in what's going on. And so I think it's going to be more a matter of, do they see an opportunity for them to make money? Because this is a kind of a side note, but I remember talking to Wally, they make they sell a ton of shovels. Right. And when, who was it? I think it was Ortovox first came out with a commercial shovel that you could change the angle of the blades so that it was a hoe.
Yep.
I was talking to him. I said, dude, why don't you come out with a shovel that has hoe mode? And he's like, I was going to do that. And then BDA came out with their version. He says, that was really slick. He says, I wanted to do that, but they beat me to it. And so my point is that Wally, he likes to find an opportunity where he can shine, and if he can't, he won't go down that road. So if he sees an opening in the second heel that he feels like Majo or 22 Designs have missed, he'll step in.
Dun dun dun.
And if he doesn't, he'll just go, we'll just stick with a real heel.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think that was some good gear gossip and kind of some binding. That was good to talk about, man. Kind of digging into the binding thing. That opened my mind to some new stuff that I hadn't really thought about. And I know we've got, for listeners out there, stay tuned because there are some cool little news pieces regarding some kids binding news and some other stuff that Craig's working on. So be sure to go over to telemarkskier.com and tune in. So anything else you want to cover before we hop off, brother?
Hey, the snow is good this year in the backcountry, even in Colorado. There's even corn. So I hope you guys haven't hung it up. And if you're, this is the perfect time, if you haven't, to earn your turns, get in the backcountry. It's nice weather, and corn is not powder, okay? But like I ran into Lily's lace the other day, and I think a better term might be, we there's the term champagne powder, super light. Well, I mean, if you're skiing on Lily's lace and it's breaking, it sounds like champagne glasses. So it's champagne corn. You need to go experience it.
It's Cristal. There you go, man. It's like the Cristal of telemark skiing. So
and you know what? It's good right now. I would say go grab it and experience it. And like, if it's good corn snow, you don't even need climbing skins. You can just boot up. You don't need to invest in more gear. Just go have fun.
Love it. All right, man. Well, we'll get you back on once we get closer to fall time, and we'll do probably need to do a gear roundup before it all gets going again. So until then, if you want to find Dostie, go check him out at telemarkskier.com on the forum. And thanks for being here, man.
Always a pleasure. Always.
All right. Peace out. Always good to catch up with Mr. Dostie, and it's always fun talking gear. He brought up a really good point that it's so funny, because for as much as I harass him about always being the gear guru and literally making it so everyone talks about gear, he made a valid point that I for some reason, I guess I've never really thought about, because we're also always talking about, it's all about the turn, man. I know all you jokesters out there are going to say, yeah, that's total telly hippie talk, but it really is all about the turn, because that's why we do it. The turn is the sensation of the turn, I think, is what really, once it clicks with everybody, that's what people are vibing on. So, but what Craig said is super interesting, is the idea that we all tend to talk about gear a lot as telemark skiers because of really how it influences the turn. So maybe in the search of the perfect turn, you're in search of the perfect combination of gear for yourself. So I thought that was kind of cool. And there's definitely some cool stuff with gear. I think we're kind of digging in. I tried to pull some info out of them on that maybe some stuff I don't know if we're kind of clear to talk about, but we are kind of digging in. Now that Craig's running telemarkskier.com, we're out trying to find the latest stories, see what people are working on, and bring that to you out there. And it's always fun. And like I said, we'll probably do a little gear roundup, buyer's guide sort of podcast prior to the season in North America, and let you know what's hot, what's not. And I'm sure some of you out there are like, well, there's no gear, there's no differences, whatever, but there's always stuff going on, and I think that's what I'm most excited about. Is, yes, I get it, there's no new boots, or there's no new this or that or the other, but there's actually quite a bit going on. So aside from that, and we're going to do our best to keep you in the mix. So with that, if you would like to stay in touch, please sign up for the mailing list. The link is in the show notes. We send out a weekly mailing kind of to aggregate content, let you know about any sales, let you know about new podcasts, new content, information. I think I said content twice. Obviously, there's content. But mailing list is a great way to stay in touch with us and really helps us get to know you. So please sign up for that. As I mentioned before, telemarkskier.com, it's subscriber supported. It is not ad supported. So the way we are running that is by you subscribing. So please consider subscribing to the premium content. We're putting at least one premium piece up a week right now through the summer, along with other news tidbits. There are some freebies, but hey, this is how we're going to grow this, our community, our news source, and talking about all the stuff that's going on out there. So thank you for your support if you're already a subscriber. If you want to check out any of our stuff on freeheellife.com, we've got some awesome lifestyle stuff to get you through the summer and show that you are repping drop knees all the time. So drop knees, not bombs tees are in there, along with a ton of other stuff. And we've got some cool new stuff coming up. You can always email me at podcast at freeheellife.com. And thank you for all those that reached out about World Telemark Day and being a point of contact last week. I will be getting in touch, and I did see your emails if I have not responded. So thank you. And as always, if you're on Apple Podcasts, drop a review. Let us know how we're doing over here. And thanks for listening. And I appreciate you. And I can't wait till next week. And until then, spread Telemark always, my friends. See you later.